The opening scene of The Long Goodbye is a masterful introduction to both the film's tone and its protagonist, Philip Marlowe. Unlike the hard-boiled, fast-talking detectives of classic noir, this Marlowe is a man out of time, sleepy, disheveled, and out of sync with the world around him. The scene unfolds in his cramped, dimly lit apartment, where he is awakened in the middle of the night by his demanding cat. Marlowe's relationship with the cat is the first clue to his character. He isn't just a pet owner. He's almost subservient to the animal, scrambling to please it despite his own exhaustion. The cat refuses the food he offers, and Marlowe, ever the problem solver, tries to trick it by emptying a different brand of cat food into the original can, a small, futile deception. When the cat sniffs out the ruse and walks away, Marlowe is left defeated, muttering to himself. This moment is more than just a quirky character beat. It's a metaphor for the entire film. Marlowe is a man who operates on a code of loyalty and honesty, but the world, like the cat, is indifferent to his efforts. His attempt to fake the right answer mirrors the larger deceptions he'll encounter: false confessions, staged deaths, and the ultimate betrayal by his friend Terry Lennox. The cat's rejection foreshadows how everyone in the story will take advantage of Marlowe's trust before ultimately walking away. The scene also establishes the film's offbeat rhythm. The dialogue is sparse, the pacing unhurried, and the mood strangely melancholic. The camera lingers on Marlowe's tired face, his rumpled pajamas, the empty apartment, all suggesting a man who is past his prime, clinging to routines that no longer matter. Even the cat, a classic noir symbol of independence, is less a companion than a reminder of Marlowe's solitude. The night hangs heavy around Marlowe's apartment when Terry Lennox appears like a specter at the door. There's something unsettling about how casually he steps into the dim light, his expensive suit slightly rumpled, his smile too easy for the hour. The way he leans against the doorway, one foot already pointed toward escape, suggests a man who's made this kind of midnight departure before. His request comes wrapped in that particular brand of masculine shorthand. No explanations needed between old friends, just the unspoken understanding that, of course, Marlowe will drop everything. Of course, he'll drive through the night. No questions asked. Marlowe's fingers pause mid-cigarette as he considers the request, but his hesitation is barely perceptible. The detective's face remains an unreadable mask, though the shadows under his eyes deepen slightly. He moves through the familiar ritual of gathering his coat and keys with the weary resignation of a man who's been down this road too many times before, yet still can't bring himself to say no. The cat watches from its perch, its tail flicking in silent judgment as the two men step into the Los Angeles night, where the streetlights cast long prison bar shadows across the sidewalk. The drive unfolds in a haze of cigarette smoke and unspoken tension. Marlowe's hands rest lightly on the wheel, his eyes flicking occasionally to the rearview mirror, more out of professional habit than actual suspicion. Lennox sits coiled in the passenger seat, his expensive cologne mixing uneasily with the smell of leather and gasoline. Every mile marker they pass seems to ratchet up some invisible tension until the air in the car becomes thick with everything being left unsaid. The border approaches like an inevitable reckoning, its flashing lights cutting through the darkness like a knife. When they finally stop, Lennox's gratitude comes too quick, too polished, the kind of thanks a man rehearses in the mirror. His hand lingers on Marlowe's shoulder just a beat too long, the weight of it feeling less like friendship and more like a man pushing someone else underwater to keep himself afloat. As Lennox disappears into the Mexican night, Marlowe remains at the wheel, the engine idling like a held breath. The empty passenger seat seems to accuse him, the indent from Lennox's body slowly fading like the memory of a bad dream. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a warning bell sounds, but Marlowe's too busy being the good guy to hear it. The car door clicks shut with finality as he turns back toward L.A., unaware he's just become an accomplice to something far darker than a midnight drive. The police interrogation scene arrives like a bucket of ice water to the face, shattering whatever illusions Marlowe might have had about this being just another routine favor for a friend. The fluorescent lights of the interrogation room buzz angrily overhead, bleaching all color from the walls and faces, turning the whole encounter into something stark and clinical. Detective Farmer leans back in his chair with the practiced ease of a man who's broken hundreds of suspects in rooms just like this, his tie slightly loosened in a show of false camaraderie. His questions come sharp and fast, each one designed to peel back layers of Marlowe's story like an onion, leaving him raw and exposed. Marlowe sits hunched forward, his rumpled suit looking even more disheveled under the unforgiving lights. His fingers tap an uneven rhythm on the metal table, the sound echoing like a telltale heart in the sparse room. Every answer he gives seems to bounce back at him twisted, his straightforward account of the night's events somehow morphing into something suspicious under the detective's skeptical gaze. The more he insists on his innocence, the more guilty he appears, a cruel paradox that tightens around his neck like a noose. The detectives play their parts perfectly. Good cop's sympathetic nods turn predatory when Marlowe's back is turned. Bad cop's aggressive posture falters just enough to suggest hidden doubts. They pass Marlowe's confession back and forth between them like a tennis ball, each readjustment of the story pulling the net tighter around him. The air grows thick with the smell of stale coffee and sweat, the walls seeming to inch closer with each passing minute. When they finally produce the damning evidence, the suitcase, the money, the photographs, it lands with the force of a hammer blow, turning Marlowe's world upside down in an instant. What makes the scene so devastating isn't the shouting or the threats, but the quiet moment when Marlowe realizes he's been played. His face goes slack not with fear, but with the dawning understanding that his code of honor means nothing in this room, that his loyalty has been weaponized against him. The detectives' satisfied smiles as they lay out their case aren't just professional pride, they're the smirk of the modern world looking down at an obsolete relic. As the cell door clangs shut behind him, the sound echoes with finality, marking not just his temporary imprisonment, but the death of his belief in the fundamental fairness of the system he's spent his life navigating. The news of Terry Lennox's suicide arrives like a gut punch wrapped in bureaucratic indifference, delivered in the sterile confines of the police station with all the ceremony of a weather report. A detective slides a grainy photograph across the desk, a corpse barely recognizable as the charming friend who had shared Marlowe's whiskey just nights before. The supposed suicide note, typed in impersonal officialese, bears none of Lennox's easy eloquence, none of the private jokes that had passed between them. The Mexican authorities have already closed the case with bureaucratic efficiency, the paperwork smelling faintly of tequila and corruption. Marlowe's fingers hover over the photograph, not quite touching the image, as if contact might make this cheap farce more real. The room seems to tilt slightly, the fluorescent lights buzzing louder in his ears. He notices details that don't add up. The pristine cuffs on the dead man's shirt, when Lennox had always fumbled with his links, the wrong wristwatch, the absence of that faint scar from Saipan that Lennox had once proudly shown him over drinks. But when he points these out, The detectives exchange glances that say clearer than words. Why trouble yourself over these details? The case is closed. The world wants this to be true. Outside the station, the Los Angeles sun beats down with cruel brightness. Marlowe stands blinking on the steps, the photograph burning a hole in his pocket. The city moves around him, cars honking, pedestrians rushing, a newspaper boy shouting headlines about another scandal. All of it continuing as though a man hadn't just been erased from existence with a few strokes of a bureaucrat's pen. He lights a cigarette, the smoke curling upward like a question mark in the still air. The taste of betrayal coats his tongue, sharper than the tobacco. In that moment, Marlowe understands the elegant cruelty of the trap. The suicide isn't just a cover-up, it's a masterpiece of humiliation. Lennox, or whoever orchestrated this, hasn't merely escaped punishment. They've made Marlowe the last fool still standing, the only one who cares enough to notice the cracks in the story. The cat's indifference in his empty apartment that night feels prophetic now. As he walks away from the police station, his shadow stretches long and thin behind him, a silent companion in his private vigil for the truth in a world that has already moved on. The Malibu sun hangs low and heavy over the Pacific when Eileen Wade first appears. A vision of calculated elegance emerging from the surf, like some melancholy mermaid. Her blonde hair catches the light just so, her expensive swimsuit clinging in all the right places, but there's something brittle in her smile as she approaches Marlowe. She extends a damp hand that feels like chilled porcelain, her grip surprisingly strong for a woman playing the fragile socialite. The salt air carries her perfume, something expensive and European that doesn't quite mask the faint medicinal scent beneath. She leads him up to the glass-walled house where the Pacific stretches endlessly behind them like a liquid mirror. Every chair and ashtray in the modernist monstrosity sits at perfect angles, the sterility broken only by the occasional empty highball glass bearing the ghost of lipstick on its rim. Her voice drops to a confidential murmur when she mentions her husband's condition, those two syllables carrying more weight than the entire Pacific visible through the picture windows. The way her fingers flutter near her throat when she speaks of Roger's disappearances suggests performance, but whether it's for Marlowe's benefit or her own remains unclear. A shadow passes over her carefully composed features when Marlowe asks one question too many. For just an instant, the society wife mask slips, revealing something harder beneath, the glint of a knife blade between the layers of chiffon. She recovers quickly, pouring tea with steady hands that shouldn't be so steady given what she's describing. The delicate china rattles just once against the saucer, the only betrayal of nerves. Outside, the waves crash with rhythmic indifference as Marlowe realizes he's being handed just enough truth to make the lies palatable. When she walks him to the door later, the sunset paints her in golds and reds, turning her into a living Modigliani. Her final handshake lingers a beat too long, her palm pressing something into his. A key, an address, the first loose thread in the tapestry. As Marlowe drives away, he catches her reflection in the rearview mirror, already reaching for the liquor cabinet before he's even cleared the driveway. The perfect hostess until the guests are gone. The road to Dr. Veringer's clinic winds through the parched California hills like a snake slithering toward prey. Marlowe's car kicks up dust that settles on the sagebrush in a fine, despairing powder. The clinic itself crouches behind wrought iron gates, its Spanish Revival facade gone to seed, the once proud arches now crumbling at the edges, the red tile roof missing teeth. A buzzer sounds with the dying whine of a wounded animal when he announces himself. Inside, the air carries the cloying sweetness of antiseptic, barely masking something more organic beneath. Dr. Varinger materializes from the shadows with the unctuous grace of a man who's made his fortune on other people's weaknesses. His smile stretches too wide beneath round spectacles that catch the light, turning his eyes into blank, gleaming discs. The good doctor's hands flutter like pale moths as he speaks, their movements too delicate for the butcher's work he performs here. His voice drips with practiced concern as he explains Roger Wade's treatment, every syllable polished smooth as the marble ashtray on his desk. The patients shuffle through the corridors like sleepwalkers, their slippered feet whispering against the terrazzo floors. Somewhere a piano plays off-key, the notes dissolving into the heat haze. When Marlowe finally finds Wade, the writer sits slumped in a wicker chair on a shaded veranda, his famous physique gone to ruin, his hands, once capable of crafting perfect sentences, now trembling around a glass, sweating more than he is. The recognition in Wade's bloodshot eyes carries more terror than relief. His booming voice has been reduced to a hoarse whisper when he warns Marlowe, "You shouldn't have come here." The words hang between them as a door slams somewhere in the depths of the clinic, the sound echoing like a gavel falling. Outside, the sun beats down with biblical fury. Marlowe lights a cigarette, the smoke curling upward toward the clinic's barred windows, where shadowy figures watch his departure. In his rearview mirror, the building seems to shimmer and distort in the heat waves, less a medical facility than some grotesque funhouse where men go to have their demons extracted at usurious rates. The gates clang shut behind him with finality, but the smell of the place, that peculiar blend of camphor and human despair, lingers in his nostrils all the way back to the coast. The air in Marty Augustine's penthouse is thick with the cloying scent of expensive cologne and impending violence. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcase the glittering Los Angeles skyline, a panorama of power that Augustine wears like one of his tailored suits. He paces behind a glass coffee table, his crocodile loafers sinking into the plush white carpet with each step, while Marlowe sits motionless, a cigarette burning forgotten between his fingers. Augustine's voice is a study in controlled menace, smooth as aged whiskey, but with the same slow burn. He speaks of money, of loyalty, of consequences, his manicured hands gesturing like a conductor leading an orchestra toward crescendo. Then, without warning, the performance reaches its climax. Augustine's girlfriend, a stunning, vacant-eyed creature draped in diamonds, makes the mistake of speaking out of turn. The room holds its breath as Augustine's face transforms, the charming facade cracking to reveal something primal beneath. His hand snakes out, grabbing a Coke bottle from the table. The smash against the girl's cheekbone is obscenely precise, the sound wet and final. Glass shards skitter across marble as she collapses, sobbing, her perfect features now a ruined painting. Augustine doesn't even look at her as he adjusts his cufflinks, his voice dropping to a whisper as he asks Marlowe, "Now do you understand how serious I am?" Blood purls along the girl's cheek, each droplet catching the ambient light like tiny rubies as she scrambles away. Marlowe's cigarette ash trembles and falls, the only outward sign of his shock. Augustine's smile returns as quickly as it vanished, all teeth and no warmth, while outside the windows, the city pulses on, indifferent. The moment lingers like gunpowder in the air, a promise that next time, the violence won't be contained to collateral damage. When Marlowe is finally dismissed, the elevator doors close on Augustine, already turning back to his view. The blood stain on the carpet, the only evidence anything unusual occurred at all. The ocean is restless the night Roger Wade dies. Marlowe arrives at the beach house to find the writer's massive silhouette framed against the sliding glass doors, backlit by the flickering glow of a television with the sound turned off. The room smells of bourbon and brine, the air thick with the kind of tension that comes before a storm breaks. Wade's hands shake as he pours another drink, the ice cubes clinking like bones in a glass coffin. His famous voice, once capable of filling lecture halls, now rasps like sandpaper over wood as he recites half-remembered lines from his own novels, words that once brought him fame, now tasting like ashes in his mouth. Marlowe watches as Wade stumbles toward the French doors, his movements those of a man walking toward something only he can see. The moon paints a silver highway across the black water, a path that seems to call to the ruined writer. There's a terrible dignity in Wade's final moments, the way he removes his watch and places it carefully on the side table, the deliberate way he folds his glasses as if preparing for some final important meeting. When he turns back to Marlowe, his eyes are clear for the first time all evening. "You should leave now," he says, and in that moment, Marlowe understands exactly what's about to happen, yet finds himself powerless to stop it. The crash of waves drowns out the sound of the screen door sliding open. Wade walks into the surf with the determination of a man keeping a long overdue appointment. His white shirt billows like a ghost in the moonlight as the undertow grabs at his legs. Marlowe stands paralyzed at the water's edge, the cold Pacific soaking his shoes as he shouts uselessly against the wind. One particularly strong wave knocks Wade off his feet, and for a brief, terrible moment, the writer surfaces, his face turned upward, eyes open to the stars, before the ocean claims him for good. Back in the house, the television flickers silently, casting blue shadows over Wade's abandoned drink, the ice nearly melted now. The pages of an unfinished manuscript flutter in the breeze from the open door. Somewhere in the night, a telephone rings and rings, unanswered. Marlowe remains at the water's edge long after the sea has swallowed all evidence of Wade's passing, the salt air drying the dampness on his cheeks that could be spray from the waves or something else entirely. In the morning, the tide will return Wade's body with the same indifference it brings in seashells and driftwood, another piece of wreckage washed ashore in the endless cycle of the Pacific. The great American novelist becomes just another beachcomber's grim discovery, his life's work reduced to a police report and tomorrow's headlines. The truth comes to Marlowe like a slow poison, seeping into his consciousness one bitter drop at a time. He stands in a sweltering Mexican cantina, the ceiling fan stirring the thick air without cooling it, when Terry Lennox steps from the shadows, not a ghost, but something worse, a living man carrying the stench of his own deception. The confident stride Marlowe remembers has been replaced by the careful movements of a man who's learned to watch his back. His tan is too perfect, his linen suit too crisp, the easy charm now stretched thin over something calculating beneath. Lennox's confession unfolds with the casual cruelty of a man peeling a bandage off a wound. He lights a cigarette with steady hands, the flame illuminating eyes that hold no remorse, only the cold satisfaction of a gambler who's beaten the house. The words come easily. How he used Marlowe, how he staged his death, how the woman Marlowe's been trying to protect was just another pawn in his game. Each revelation lands like a sucker punch, but what cuts deepest isn't the betrayal. It's Lennox's bewilderment that Marlowe still cares about the truth at all. "It was just business," he keeps saying, as if this explains everything, as if honor is just an antiquated concept no practical man would cling to. Outside, the Mexican sun beats down on whitewashed walls, the glare so intense it hurts the eyes. Somewhere a radio plays a love song turned tinny by distance. Marlowe's hands hang loose at his sides. The right one inches from the gun he knows he'll use, but hasn't quite admitted to himself yet. Lennox keeps talking, his voice taking on that old familiar cadence Marlowe once found comforting, now made obscene by context. The realization settles over Marlowe like dust. The friend he'd grieved never existed. The man before him is a stranger wearing a dead man's face. When the shot finally comes, it's almost an afterthought, a period at the end of a sentence too long left unfinished. The report echoes across the plaza, scattering pigeons and children alike. Lennox looks surprised, then almost amused as he slides down the wall, his expensive suit gathering dust. His final expression isn't fear or anger, but something closer to pity. For Marlowe, still foolish enough to believe actions should have consequences, still romantic enough to think justice matters in a world that's moved on. The blood spreads slowly across the pristine linen, a dark flower blooming in the relentless sun, as Marlowe turns away, not from the body, but from the man he'd thought he knew, finally laying that illusion to rest beside the corpse in the dirt. The final confrontation between Marlowe and Terry Lennox unfolds with the quiet inevitability of a closing coffin lid. They meet in the scorched remains of a Mexican courtyard where the air shimmers with heat and the scent of rotting bougainvillea. Lennox stands framed by a crumbling archway, his once impeccable linen suit now wrinkled with the weight of his deception. His smile, the same one that had once disarmed Marlowe so completely, now looks like a crack in a porcelain mask, revealing the hollow man beneath. Marlowe's hands don't shake as he raises the gun. There's no dramatic speech, no final plea for understanding. Just the terrible clarity of a man who's been played for a fool one too many times. The cicada's drone fills the silence between them, a natural metronome counting down their last moments as friends. Lennox begins to speak, his voice still carrying that old boyish charm, but the words curdle in the desert air. His explanation, about the money, the wife, the perfect crime, sounds tinny and small against the vast Mexican sky. When the bullet hits, Lennox staggers not with cinematic grandeur, but with the clumsy surprise of a man who truly believed his charm was armor enough. He clutches at his stomach, his fingers coming away red, and for the first time, his eyes show genuine bewilderment. Not at dying, but at the realization that Marlowe, poor, loyal, obsolete Marlowe, was capable of this final betrayal of their twisted friendship. As he slides down the sun-baked wall, his blood painting abstract patterns on the white stucco, his last expression isn't anger or even pain, but something closer to admiration. Marlowe watches the light leave his old friend's eyes, the gun heavy in his hand. The cat, when he returns home, still refuses the food he offers, just as Lennox had refused the redemption Marlowe might have granted. The apartment feels emptier now, the shadows longer. He pours himself a drink with steady hands, but leaves it untouched on the counter. Outside his window, Los Angeles pulses with indifferent life, its neon signs flickering like distant stars. The long goodbye is over at last, and all that remains is the echo of a gunshot fading into desert silence, and the understanding that the world he believed in never existed at all. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.